Hey everyone, it's Classic DM, and this video is going to go into tremendous detail over the Indigo Oasis free module that I've written this past month, and it's a Pathfinder compatible adventure. And what we're going to do is just dig into tons and tons and tons of details. Let's get these ambients off in the background so I have too much distraction going on. Now, this video was really designed for the Game Master. So if you're a player, you may be doing yourself a little bit of a disservice, but that's okay. You know, sometimes it's fun to know what's going to happen before you play it. I'll leave that up to you. So we're going to talk about through the entire module, which is about 40 pages of content, the maps, the AI, the enemy encounters, the storyline, the formatting, because I'm using a very different format than your run-of-the-mill kind of standard, industry standard module. And at the very end, we're also going to kind of take a look at the map and how to play it. And I'll do some markups on the map at the very end that talk about things that are going to happen that I've done in playtesting and things that could happen and how to handle it in different situations. So without any more delay, let's get going. So I'd like you to get a copy of it. If you have a copy of it, it's free. It's on my Patreon page. You do not need to be a supporter of me on Patreon to get a copy of this for free. You can distribute it from free. You can get it from a friend for free, whatever you want to do. If you have a Patreon account, which still costs you nothing, you can still go to the actual posting and download the PDF and respond and give feedback there. What I'd like to do is to channel most of the feedback either here on YouTube or on the Patreon site. So don't fret that I'm pushing you to try to pay for something, because we're not doing that at all. So right off the bat, we have kind of a theme going on here, and this lyric from a song of mine I thought was kind of interesting because it ties into this idea of the crossroads of time. And this is from a Lorena McKennitt song called The Old Ways. Now, don't get confused with my musical taste. I'm an Iron Maiden, KXM, Dokken, George Lynch guitar player, Richie Blackmore kind of a guy. But some of the songs that this person has done over the years, a Canadian artist for the last 30 years, has a lot of indigenous or traditional North African music and instrumentation in her songs. So a lot of the music in this adventure comes from inspiration from one of her songs called Marco Polo. So if you're into music, you might appreciate all the different instrumentation that's used in this module, because it's really designed for someone who's never played Pathfinder before at all. In fact, we're going to talk about that in more detail. Let's go ahead. Of course, you have a title page, and with any kind of module you're going to release, you have to have your basic Pathfinder compatible front end. I've got links to various websites. Credit for Vesely Provodov, who is from Narva, Estonia, who did all the Unreal Engine 4 visuals for this map. Not specifically for the module, but I worked with him directly to get permission to use these and distribute these for free. I highly recommend you click on this link here to the Ancient Desert Oasis and go check out his ArtStation artwork page. It's really beautiful. He's extremely talented. From there, let's just dig right into it. And I'm not going to read everything in here, but I'm going to kind of highlight some of the high-level concepts that you may not get from reading it. So if you're trying to read along with me, what you're going to get is this kind of 1 hour overview of something that might take you more than an hour to read it. All right? So let's just go into it right away here. So basically, this is a one-shot, meaning you can play this in 2 hours, maybe 3. Depends how complicated your players are and how creative your players are and how experienced your players are. And with that in mind, there's recommendations on how to get a brand new player who's never played even D&D before or Advanced Dungeons & Dragons or anything, how to get a character in front of them, get the character renamed, let them pick the race, shuffle a few numbers around, and start playing right away using the Pathfinder compatible pre-generated characters done by the Pathfinder Society. So there's 2 other videos you may want to check out. If you like this and you think this is kind of cool and you want to get involved, there's 2 other videos where I actually draw the battle map that you're going to see later on, and I talk you through the design of the battle map and what it looks like and why the decisions were put everything where it was, which is drawing inspiration from the visual imagery. There's also a video that covers how the design and the theme, where all the ideas came from. Some people like to see that kind of making of stuff. Some people don't. Since this is a digital book, it's a PDF. Everything that's in blue and underlined is a hyperlink. So if you highlight over anything in the module, or whether link to this or link to this, things like this are going to give you direct links to things. So when I talk about a video and there's a link, if you click on it, it'll go directly to either to the channel or directly to the video itself. So I'm decided to do that as opposed to do something that's print, because this enables us to do, it's a modern world, we can do much larger graphics. A lot of the images are in landscape format. Most modules are in portrait format and PDF form. They're kind of small, they kind of fit on a little phone. This is really kind of designed to be much more grander and more beautiful than that. So, but it is electronic. So one thing it's also very different is every time there's text like this, which is in a sand color, which is a themed around this Oasis theme anyway, you read that to the players. That's written in a prose format. You just read it right to the players right away at the right time. but a lot of times you'll find there's text that's in light green, like you see right here below. So text in light green is something you really shouldn't read to the players, but it gives you a sense of situation you can impart information to the players in your own way. Okay, so we're not writing scripts here for dialogue and acting and Music Man and all that kind of business from high school and chorus and stuff. What we're trying to do here is give you some good, solid, vivid writing that you can read to your players that really kind of captures the scene of what's about to happen to them. And then I give you the green information for you to kind of like, I need to kind of make sure my players understand how this works. I'm just going to say it my own way. Also, throughout the whole adventure, we're highlighting things in yellow. Those are really much key concepts to kind of pay attention to. So if you're flipping through the whole module and you see something yellow, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I didn't even remember to do this here. And, you know, I put these little post-it notes throughout the whole adventure to kind of keep things upbeat and casual, where I kind of give you straight shot information right to the game master to let you know, remember, show them this picture, remember, read them this, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of helped to self-guide you through it. The whole front preamble, the whole module does let you know that there are the 2 videos, like I mentioned before. Each one of these is a hyperlink that you can actually use. And I even have a video that tells you how to use the Pathfinder pre-generated iconic characters and get playing with someone who's never played before. Now, you guys and girls who have been playing Pathfinder 1 and 2nd edition for a long time, that's not going to apply to you. But my target audience for this video was really kind of get it so people like, you know, family, friends, and children can play this. So it's really designed to be accessible. Now the theme, the central theme, of the Indigo Oasis anchors on helping the lost soul of an innocent murdered child join her mother and her dog in the afterlife. The adventure blends surrealism, memories, time, and music with gameplay that's both mysterious and frenetic. So we're using themes here that people will understand. You're not going off into the glacial rift of the frost giant Jarl and killing King Ukumulf in the bottom. And people who don't know anything about D&D, they're like, what is all that business? I mean, they have a tough enough time understanding what half the characters in the Vikings are Band of Brothers, you know? So what we're trying to do here is create themes that make sense to normal people, people who haven't played, because I'd like for you to be able to entice someone to come play, because there's a lot of magic of adventure in Pathfinder and in Dungeons & Dragons that they will potentially miss out on if you try to just throw complicated adventure paths at them. Those adventure paths are really designed for people who are really, really into the game, have been playing it for a long time, and has that razor sharpness to it that you really need for a challenging adventure. This adventure is toned down to be much more appealing to more of a broadband audience, but I include ways for you to ramp it up. So if you have real know-it-all players, you can also cause them some issues too. Another element we do here is we do talk about the Pathfinder 2nd edition. I am going to evangelize my YouTube channel a little bit, where we talk about, we have lots of stuff in AD&D and we have lots of stuff on Pathfinder as well. This is a Pathfinder compatibility product. You'll see the OGL is taken verbatim at the back of the whole end. It's got a citation page and all that kind of stuff. And this is really important too. I really feel it's really important for people to be able to get direct links to stuff. One thing you'll find with Paizo is they are so prolific. They're constantly tweeting stuff. They're constantly updating Facebook. There's something about Starfinder. There's something about Pathfinder. There's a stream with Jason. They're going to a trade show. There's a pasting in the Facebook page, a review that was done 3 months ago. It's just constant social media. And then behind the scenes, they're a publisher. They're writing, printing, publishing, distributing stuff all the time. And if you weren't paying attention on that one magical day between 4 o'clock and 5 in the afternoon, you will miss out on this stuff. And some of this core stuff I've been paying attention to is really, really, really helpful. And in this case, it's the community use package, Pathfinder 2e, iconic pre-generated characters. You see I've got my mouse cursor over the hyperlink right here. I made a whole video on how to take those characters, right, and have your son or your daughter or your wife or your girlfriend or your roommate or anyone, your partner, say, hey, I want to play this really cool character here. They can look at the characters. They can figure out which one they like. I want to play this tough character. They can change the race. Like my wife liked the druid but didn't like the little gnome, you know, so she wanted to change the race. So we changed it to an elf to match one of our World of Warcraft characters. I mean, that kind of stuff. So that's really, really important. So throughout this module, there are lots of links that go right to stuff I'm talking about. If you've never heard of the Pathfinder Society, guess what? It's right there. So for you guys and girls who've done this for a long time, that stuff, you don't need it. You can gloss over it. But this is another thing. You know, I mentioned this a few minutes ago, character level and balance. I anguished over this for a long time. I think the thing that I'm trying to do here, which may be really helpful for new players, is I want to create content that's got my own personal twist to it, right? Just my own creativity in it. It's the way I like to do it. So I'm motivated to do it because it's not doing it for money. And secondly, is something that will allow you to pull in a new player to your group. Because sometimes you'll find it's hard to find someone to play. And if you do get a solid group and you are playing a lot, sometimes not everyone's there. So there's a lot of things in modern media and books and novels and magazines and television shows that appeal to a lot of people. And tabletop role-playing games sometimes get kind of thrown into the same bucket as like Magic the Gathering or Catan and all these other kinds of things. And people have a preconceived idea of what, you're playing with your little soldiers. Some guys' wives give them a hard time about that who play bolt action. What I'm trying to do is kind of open a door to people to realize how much cool creativity there is. So if you're a very, very hardcore Pathfinder 2e player and you've been very active, especially in the Facebook group that I'm a member of, and you know the rules really good, I mean, you're the guy who always answers the rules, you're going to take the stuff I've done here and you're probably going to tweak it around. Now, if you've never done that before, Paizo did a really cool thing here. Before the Game Master Guide comes out, which doesn't come out until next year, right? They released this free PDF, which I got a link for you right here, and some pictures on the left. It's called the Game Mastery Guide Monster and Hazard Creation PDF. They could just call it the Monster Creation PDF. It was just released like, I don't know, 23 days ago or something. And while I was in the middle of writing this adventure, this damn thing came out. And I had already gone through and set up all the character stat blocks for the dead and the undead version of the Crimson Warrior. I was like, oh my goodness, let me stop and go back and see what's in here. So I referenced some of the stuff in here when I rebalanced my enemies, because I wanted to have enemies that work for a complete newbie player, even one player. You can play this adventure with just a game master and like your son or something, right? Or just a friend. You don't need 4 players to play this thing, so it's scalable. So I refer a lot to this PDF. It's really, really useful. The hazard part, I'm not really a hazard guy, but having the armor class and the saving throws and that kind of stuff, super useful. So once again, that's in there for you too. So as you can see, I'm providing a lot more information than just the module. And so some of the stuff you'll be fine. Hey, you know what? I forgot where this was. Let me go back here and get the download link. So this is where we start getting a little philosophical, right? I want to kind of evangelize my perspective on things. And it's not that I'm trying to be on a high horse, but I'm a video game designer. I'm not a pen and paper role-playing game designer. I've been a role-playing game player for a long, long time. And over 44 years or whatever of playing these kind of games, there's something I've seen in recent years, mostly since the 5th edition of D&D came out, to kind of like ruins it, I think, in some ways. And I kind of want to speak to this here because when I'm writing this, I'm kind of speaking to, well, I am speaking directly to maybe a new game master, right? Maybe someone who hasn't played Pathfinder 2e before. They kind of want to hear a little bit more of a different take on things. And that's what I think is unique about what I'm trying to do here as opposed to everyone else. Anyone can write an adventure. Not everyone can kind of draw in new people to it. And that's what I want to hope to do. But you really need to let the players take the adventure in any direction they want and let them use any approach they wish. It's always, fun is always the number one rule in these kind of games, whether it's a role-playing game or a war game or whatever it is, or just a board game. If you're not having fun, you're not going to do it again. So, and if you don't like something, change it. Like, this is one thing that's always kind of rough around the edges with Facebook in the modern world. It's very easy to say that sucks, or I don't like it, or you should use this wash. It's all that kind of stuff's happening a lot. When someone creates something, a body of work like this, sure, give them feedback, but don't be like massively negative to people. Just make a suggestion to them in a polite way. And there are a group of people that like to get out there and argue about every rule all the time. But at the same time, are you drawing in new players? Are you making it fun for everyone else? Sure, there's a lot of importance to being correct and playing the rules by the book. Some people absolutely need to play the game by the book. And I've tried and endeavored very hard here to make sure all the rules do fit by the book. But the one thing I've seen happen is a lot of people try to control the adventure. Let's put it this way. You're the game master, not the game director. Don't control everything. Allow the player to unfold, allow the players to do things that they want to do, okay? And you're going to see I touch on this throughout the adventure. Once we get into what happens, first this happens, then this happens, release the players, this kind of stuff. So it's really important that you remember that. So don't try to force the adventure in any direction. Just let it go whichever way it wants to go, because in this design, I've accounted for everything that could possibly do and how to make it work so it's fun no matter what happens. So that's one thing I think is really, really important. So I'm trying to give you a little proof. I'm trying to show you, not just tell you, if you know what I'm trying to say. Now, conflict is super important. One thing I tell people in my game studios is that, prompt the player action, but let all those ideas crystallize in a player's mind. If you have someone playing adventure says, okay, you guys are going to go into this vampire castle and kill the vampire lord, where's the surprise in that? They're just thinking, well, I wonder if he looks cool. I wonder if there's any art for him. I wonder what level he'll be. There's no real, if you go into a creepy castle and then you slowly start to discover that it looks like there's signs of a, Hotel California type thing going on here, and they soon discover there is a vampire living here, they've discovered this, they've crystallized that idea in their mind. So be sure to not tell the players, like, you're trapped in the desert and you'll die unless you go somewhere. Let them figure that out for themselves. And you'll see that in the writing of this module that it's written that way, speaking directly to the game master to kind of make that clear. Now, also, if you're a new game master, be sure you understand, of course, how stride, strike, and multiple attack penalty works. Those are the three most basic things in this 3-action economy. And, of course, you can check that up on page 447. And if you don't have a copy of the rulebook, $14.99 in PDF format, 640 pages, okay? I get no kickbacks for this, by the way. I'm just trying to evangelize the good stuff. Let's get into it. So you're a game master. This is the page 10, okay? We got a little preamble out of the way. Page 10. This is where you need to kind of set things up. You're going to want to read the green stuff and kind of tell your party what's happening. And here's kind of the overview. The Indigo Oasis begins with the party traveling with a camel caravan on a 2-week journey west across the endless dunes of a desert, reminiscent of North Africa's Sahara. The reason for the trip is up to you, but it should be simple. Go from point A to point B with no anticipated issues or goals between them. Now, notice that's in green. That's information for you to give to the players in your own way. If you've got your own campaign, you're going to come up with new names. If you've got a motivation between campaign stop A and campaign stop B, and you need them to take a detour through the desert, then you should do that. Now, if you've never done that before, I went ahead and added some information that's useful from the Lost Omens World Guide. Now, I'm not a massive Lost Omens World walking wave of history, okay? Because the Pathfinder 1 generation, I completely missed that. I was playing AD&D still. But I did a little bit of research, and I provided you some links to the community-created wiki about some of these locations. So I suggest you make that trip start in Totra in the region of Syrian and head west towards Shaman Sek, which is an oasis, with the final or ultimate destination be Lamasara in the Janira River to the far west. Now, since this is an electronic book and you don't know what any of these names mean, you can click on this and find out what that is. You can click on this and find out what the oasis is, and it'll go directly to the web page. And of course, in the Lost Omens World Guide, there's a whole chapter 5, about the Golden Road. So this adventure takes place there. So from this point forward, we're talking about this caravan west to Lamasara. Now, once again, you're going to be in a desert. Stuff in sand colored, this light yellow color stuff, you're going to read to the players. The caravan leader, Abdul Hamid, is your party's guide, well versed in the route. He's a simple desert dweller accompanied by 2 of his brothers. The 3 have done this trip 10 times a year for the last 30 years, which essentially involves loading up with water and food for the first 5 days, stopping for 2 days at Shaman Sek Oasis, and then continue on to the final leg over 5 days to Lamasara. So this is where you get back to the information to paraphrase to your players. The party members each have a camel, traditional indigo blue-dyed desert robes. The men guide everyone as to what to do, although they do not speak common, okay? Keep communication stoic and abrupt. So you want to limit responses to the players with basic things like yes and not good and this very bad and now we go and sleep now. This is something I've personally experienced in my life, living in different countries and working around the world, such as Germany and Budapest, Hungary, and in China and Canada. Sometimes when you really don't speak the language, the person at the other end, if you keep trying to speak English, they're just going to know a couple little things to speak back to you. This is really important because I don't want the players to overly focus. You really don't want the players to overly focus on these 3 characters. You can show them this picture of the caravan leader, Abdul Hamid. I haven't even provided names for the 2 brothers, okay? They're basically red shirt guys, if you know what I'm talking about. So this is something also very important. At the outset of the adventure, sometimes players try to gain control of the situation by pressing the GM with a million questions or attempting creative actions. Like, I want to shapeshift into a hummingbird and fly and see what's ahead. Like, all these kinds of things. It's okay for that to happen. But the caravan guide's not speaking the same language as the characters will ensure you have control. So what you're trying to do here is establish this. I'm a stranger in a strange land. I'm on a trip. I've got these expert guides with me. If you're ever watching these reality TV shows like Gordon Ramsay cooking in South America or the Josh guy going around the world, sometimes they're in a foreign country and they've got a local guide. He's going to tell them to climb a tree and pull these ingredients down. And it's very funny. But the characters, that they meet, the people they meet, they don't really speak English very well. So the shows are tailored towards English speakers, but you have these situations and now we go and this very bad. So use that kind of stuff to kind of bridge the gap between whatever language your characters are speaking, the player characters, to make sure that they don't overly focus on the NPCs themselves. Now, one thing you can do when you start setting the tone for this kind of thing is we've got some visual images, which are just photographs taken from the web from National Geographic and other open, public accessible information or open source information. So you've got this endless dunes theme. The 2 brothers kind of look like these guys, lower right-hand corner, with their indigo robes wrapped over their noses. These guys are experts. They know everything about the desert. And of course, we got a little writing here at the bottom you could read to your players. Basically reading that dunes rise and fall like waves, shimmering sands, parched dust, and an opaque sky. Silent. Only the occasional slobbering blurt from your camel pierces the stoic silence. Your guides, their faces concealed behind indigo cloth, watch your every move, but with this disinterest. Sorry, I can't speak. So basically what you're trying to establish here is that, you know, the guides are helping you, but they're not part of the big mystery, okay? So we go on to the next phase. We're doing our journey across the desert. As the caravan heads west out into the open desert, the first 3 days pass without incident. Travel starts before sunrise at 4 a.m. and stops around 12 noon. Abdul and his brothers set up tents for everyone to rest during the heat of the day. At 4 p.m., the riding continues for another 6 hours until after dark. The night camp with dinner wraps up around 10 p.m. when everyone sleeps until 4 a.m. and the cycle repeats. The caravan leader Abdul Hamid and his 2 brothers direct everything and have all the supplies, water, food, and necessary equipment. You need only follow instructions. No moving during the heated days the sun can kill with heat stroke. And you can show these pictures to your players. The picture on the right showing this. This is actually a Tuareg camp that was set up at night. It comes from a CNN article by Mark Evele from March of 2013 entitled Surviving the Sahara 3 Weeks of the Tuaregs. You'll see a lot of influence of this module leans heavily on Tuareg mythology, Tuareg heroes, Tuareg clothing, and that part of North Africa and the Sahara, which is an entire culture here in the real world that does this kind of stuff. Can you imagine being out there in a desert and seeing that beautiful open galaxy stars above you? The Milky Way is just absolutely fantastic. So I thought that would be very compelling for your players to see. But of course, we need to kick it up a notch. Sandstorm. On the 3rd day of their journey to Shivansek, a horrendous sandstorm kicks up from the west at midday. Abdul and his brothers leap into action, commanding everyone to cluster together with a makeshift shelter of heavy blankets. You all lie prone behind a dune to minimize the direct force of the wind. The storm tears the gear and the supplies to pieces, lifting anything not tied down and launching it across the parched dunes. The wind gusts of 200 miles per hour pluck the camels up and away into the cloud of sand. Abdul and his brothers say prayers nonstop, mumbling like children. At one stage, one of the brothers blames you for the bad omen, saying the gods betrayed them for helping infidels like you, motivated by greed. As night comes down, lightning arcs through the storm, hitting each of Abdul's brothers and killing them instantly. Overcome by emotion, Abdul drags their bodies under the blankets and holds them close. Through the night, lightning randomly strikes the sand, charring it into glass. Moving and walking is impossible. There is no escape from the storm's fury. The brutal sandstorm passes on at sunrise, and you find yourself alone. Abdul is nowhere to be seen, and the bodies of his brothers missing. And you can show them, your players, this picture here of the sandstorm coming. So with this kind of situation, you know, what you're trying to do here is like, oh my goodness, that sounds terrible. Now the players aren't really expected to play any of the action. It's like, get down, get under the blanket. You're going to be up against the side of a dune. The thing is coming from the west. So the sandstorm's coming from the direction you're trying to go in. For example, this photograph is taken looking to the southwest, right? If you're north and looking southwest, this thing's coming at you from the west. So there's really no need for the players to do any kind of action here. But what does set the stage for, we now got ourselves off the beaten track and we start going back to speaking to the DM how you want to transition your players to the Indigo Oasis itself. The next phase of the adventure is where you will transition a player from lost in the middle of the desert to reaching the surrealistic Indigo Oasis. Many players will immediately start searching around looking for Abdul and his dead brothers' bodies, but there are no signs of any of them or items from the caravan. That made me thirsty. Let me get a drink of water. So as a GM, excuse me, your first goal, I'm choking on saying, their first goal is to develop fear and a sense of hopelessness. Allow the players to search, but ensure to put pressure on them if they start moving around or exerting themselves from 11 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, which is when the temperatures rise over 136 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 58 degrees Celsius. Be sure and do a little bit of research about how lethal heat exhaustion is in the human body in real life as a point of reference. Feel free to mention symptoms such as profuse sweating, fainting, dizziness, weak rapid pulse, blurred vision, and weakness. So feel free to apply conditions that match the above medical symptoms of heat exhaustion to the players to build fear if they continue to tromp around in the sand in full plate mail, if you know what I'm trying to say. But let them rest and drink water to get rid of the conditions. And I've got a link here to the conditions section. It's page 618 to 623 of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Core Rulebook. But yikes, don't kill your players. Just make sure they get nervous. You know, if you start going into the condition system and you're a new player and you got a new player playing, these mechanics are going to be confusing. Even today, there are people asking questions about, when I'm dying and I'm doomed, but I've been paralyzed, how do I, you know, they don't understand. The conditions are very tricky. They're very technical to work with. So your goal is to not kill the party with freaking conditions, okay? Or have them start making saving throws against confusing condition rules, which quite frankly are kind of counterintuitive and bad for a new player to comprehend. There's nothing wrong with those rules, but they're a little bit more on the expert level. So if you got new players, just make them realize that the situation is kind of dire. player, and they'll probably figure it out. Like, I shouldn't be running around the heat of the day. We're going to hunker down until nighttime, or wait till early morning, start walking around the desert and figure out what to do. They're not going to be able to do anything to escape the desert. Most players will get this, but be prepared for that rules lawyer or overly excitable player who just thinks this is some kind of a challenge to defeat. Use a soft touch when dealing with these kinds of players, as all they're trying to do is just play smart. So you should not reprimand or demotivate them. Expect players to think and act resourcefully, assuming escaping the desert is what they're supposed to be doing, okay? Soon players will start pushing the boundaries. Before they do, you need to kind of landmark where they are. So start them on square 5, which we've got a diagram for this on the next page. Now, we create this diagram to kind of give you a sense. Everyone's going to start in square 5, and each one of these grids is 6 miles by 6 miles. So don't tell the players that our desert is going to loop, all right? The adventurers are essentially trapped in a strange ripple in history, which is associated with the Indigo Oasis, which is over 1,000 years old. Traveling in any direction will loop them back to the opposite side, like 6 miles back on itself. If you're an old school coin hop player, you know what asteroids is like, right? You go off to the left of the screen, you come over on the right of the screen. So in this situation, you're talking about an 18 mile by 18 mile grid, okay, of total area, which is a lot of area. You could probably do the measurement yourself and figure out how much volume that is. But if someone starts in grid 5 and starts heading off to the west, per se, if the north is to the top, they go 6 miles to the edge of grid 4, which incidentally is about as far as you can see in this picture. You see this picture below where it looks like there's mountains in the distance? That's actually a mirage. It's not really mountains. If you travel that far, you'll be looped back on the other side onto 6. So let's just clear that up again. For example, if you start out at square 5 and headed west, you would travel about out of square 5, enter square 4, which is 6 miles across, but as you leave square 4, you loop back to square 6. This applies even if you shapeshift into a bird or something. So this is really, really important. You want the players to be able to push their boundaries and kind of sort of figure this out on their own. You don't want to answer the question, are we looping back to where we were? I want to put something in the ground and see if I see it. That's fine. Let them do that. If they want to put some kind of landmark in the ground and they loop back around and they see the landmark again, they're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? They might try all kinds of things, trying to cast Dispel Magic. Who knows? They might want to disbelieve an illusion. Who knows what's happening? Let them all do those things. But in reality, they're kind of trapped in a ripple of time. There's nothing magical about this that's going to make it be something they can figure out. Oh, we're trapped in some magical trap or it's an illusion. It's actually a real location. So let's go on from there. So the Crimson Warrior, this is a landmarking element. So once your players kind of settle into the pattern of resting and moving in cooler temperatures and searching for a way out of the desert, you can introduce the next element, which serves the purpose of landmarking where they are, and also provides you a way for them to reach the Indigo Oasis. So if you look back on our map here, we've got this little marker that says that, here we go, at number 5, we got this little skull and this little suitcase here, right? So there's a skeleton and a trunk. I spelled skeleton wrong. I'll have to fix that. Let's go down to what we got going on here. So as you move across the endless dunes, you see something half buried in the sand. As you approach, it looks to be a desiccated camel skeleton and a warrior rider. The warrior wears tattered and faded red robes marked with crimson star design, concealing a shattered scale mail jacket. The skeleton's mandible lies open as if still gasping for air and seems to have been here for at least 1,000 years. As you look closely, his outstretched skeletal arms and hands clutch to something square protruding from the sand. An intricate carved red trunk, easily 3 feet long and 2 feet wide. A single keyhole sits between the latch and the middle. The chest lock is jammed, frozen from eons beneath the sand, but a cursory search of the soldier reveals a brass key with a ring, and on that ring is a charm in the design of a jug of pottery, labeled in cursive writing on one side and very block etchings on the other. And you can show the players these 2 little etchings here. Now, these are 2 actual real languages taken from real world history. The far right one is an Arabic language, the bottom left one's a Tuareg language. So they mean the same thing, and they're the same word. But this is a chance for you to kind of introduce decipher writing and recall knowledge and identify magic, kind of recall knowledge checks, right? So there's rules for that on page 233 and 253 of the 2nd edition core handbook, right? But in this situation, we're going to change it up just a touch, right? So there's 2 ways this can work. The players who actually know how to play, you can have them do this kind of by the book, like they're real decipher writing success. Now, technically, decipher writing requires you to actually already be able to read the language to a certain degree. So you can kind of just give them that. If they're out here traveling across this desert, they probably knew what they were doing. Maybe they speak a few words. The writing is in a different language, but maybe they know enough about it to kind of piece it together. But if they succeed in the decipher writing check, here's what you want to tell them. The dependent reads Tafalalt, which literally means Jana's drug for drinking water from the Indigo Oasis. So most players are going to pick up on the Indigo Oasis word. They probably see the cover to your module, they heard about it on the web or whatever, but they don't know who Jana is. They have no idea what that is. Now, if they do a recall knowledge success, this is someone's like they're going to use occultism or religion checks or whatever the rules specifically say, that there's two different languages from two different time periods. And pretty much the knowledge check would reveal to them that this is from a period 1,000 years ago when two brothers fought against one another and ultimately killing each other's families under two different banners, the Crimson Sun and the Indigo Waters. So we have two different opposing sun versus waters kind of themes here. The red sun and the indigo, which is like a deep purplish blue color waters. You may pick up on the idea that the writing has two different forms of language written on the back of it. One's from one faction and one's from the other. Next we can move on to an identify magic success. Every time you play any tabletop role-playing game, there is always someone that's going to try to read magic, identify magic, etc., etc. So if they do that, right, the pendant feels magical as it does not belong to this time. As you hold it, you see a mirage of a building and a beautiful spring-fed canal fade in and out for a moment. For a moment, you thought you heard faint music echoing across water, a woman's voice singing, a hurdy-gurdy, a tabla, hand drums, mandolins, and a violin. So at this point, you're like, wow, this must mean something, right? They were running around the desert, they find these clues, and some players are going to really latch onto the idea of this trunk here. So this is a great time for you to actually show them these pictures here. So you got this big, beautiful chest, right? This trunk, this red trunk. It's really heavy. It takes two people to carry it, right? Half buried in the sand. They can easily uncover it from the sand like an archaeologist, and then they open it up and it has this beautiful fabric inside. So if the players don't succeed in any of the checks, holding the charm on the keyring will result in the music and the key will still open the chest. There's really no real reason for you to block the players from progressing here. So for example, let's say they did the check and it didn't work. If they hold the charm in their hand, meaning like the key ring, it touches any part of their body, you would run and read them this entry. As you hold the charm on the ring in your hand, music emanates around you, echoing around across lapping water. A woman's voice singing, a hurdy-gurdy, tabla, hand drums, mandolins, a violin, all manner of curious stringed instruments play a beautiful song with intertwined melodies and a powerful marching rhythm. The music is faint and drifts off after a few moments, no matter how hard you concentrate. So they're like, whoa, that's kind of strange. What's going on with that? You can hand the key ring to somebody else. Another player could do it, and they hear the same thing. But what you could describe them is that you hear a different part of the song, as if the song is continuously playing in the background. It's kind of like turning the radio on and turning the radio off when Black Hole Sun from Soundgarden is jamming away. You can close your eyes for 20 seconds and play it, and you hear a guitar solo, close your eyes and turn it back on. So you're going to kind of have that thing going on. So in your mind, imagine that this song is always playing in the background here, but when they have this little thing in their hand, it kind of fades in and fades away. Okay? Then they're going to want to open a chest. Who doesn't want to open the big red chest? As soon as they do, the key clicks and air hisses out from the trunk like a gasp of breath. That means it feels like it's been sealed for a long time. It hasn't been opened, and it's kind of vacuum sealed too. The lid creaks and opens on its own. So it's a really nice, beautiful chest. It doesn't like require you to creak and pry it open. It's not like busting it open like Indiana Jones and crates of the Ark of the Covenant. Inside is beautiful indigo silk. We can use that picture in the upper right-hand corner, covering several musical instruments. So this is where you start making connections between the music and the time and the passage. So you can show them pictures like this. And these are pictures just taken from the web for what these instruments are. But some of them are indigenous and very ancient. So we have a hurdy-gurdy, which is an instrument that you turn with this crank and has these strings, makes these funny kind of whining sounds. It kind of sounds like a mix between bagpipes and a string instrument and a violin. It's a real integral instrument for this region of the world, this North African Sahara type of environment. You have this harp, which is a very old school version of like a Sumerian harp, beautiful design. And all these instruments are sitting in this trunk all wrapped and covered up with this beautiful blue indigo silk. You have a mandola, which is a 12-string kind of a guitar with double strings, very small version of it. You have a tabla, which is a pair of hand drums. There could be multiple sets of those. A doorstop flute, which is a flute you hold in the ground, put your foot over it, and you can tweak and define how the sounds come out of it. It's not something you run around holding your hand like Pan, right? And you can have a violin. Now, technically, we all know the violin is a little bit more later in world history, but who's to say that our connection to this environment requires us to be at 500 BC? We don't really need to do that. What we can do is tie this in. We're not putting electric guitar in here. There's no Stratocasters, but you want to have these instruments here because you notice that a lot of them are all string instruments and percussions. They're all very basic. There's no brass instruments or anything like that. So this ties back into our theme of music. One thing I really encourage you to try doing, You may not want to do it, but if you have a laptop and you're playing and you've got this projected on a big screen TV, you're putting on a small monitor, you're showing the monitor to your friends or whatever, you got little speakers on your laptop, or if you got a cool Bluetooth speaker with some bass, like these Bose Color Tube Bluetooth speakers, they cost like $100. I love the damn things. Great to sit by the side of the pool and jam your favorite songs off your phone from Spotify, right? You can have players pick up an instrument and do a performance check to kind of make it feel like, oh, there's these cool instruments, and I heard the song. I wonder if I succeed at performance check. So actually, this is very, very different. You kind of want to cue up the song I have on the right-hand side, which is Marco Polo by Lorena McKennitt. This is a song with no major lyrics. It's just a bunch of la la la, but all those instruments start playing together. They start off individually, and they all merge together, and it has this marching rhythm. So let's go ahead and give you the description of that. Now, don't be fooled. I love Iron Maiden and Dokken and KXM and Dio and Purple and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Megadeth. But in this situation, for this fantastical fantasy adventure, I think this music is appropriate. Feel free to tease me about it on the internet. I don't care, right? So in this situation, you can make them do a performance check, but it doesn't really matter whether they succeed or fail. So here's what happens. If they pick up one of the instruments, you want to read them this passage that's right down here, right? As you hold the instrument, it seems to fill you with expertise and musicianship like you've never imagined. You begin playing a wonderful song as if you've done so your entire life. This instrument's not playing itself, it's you. You can improvise, circle around in any key, and blend your own creativity with the main melody. So the players can actually swap instruments here. Like they can try different instruments, let them experiment, but what's happening, it's the same song. So if someone like is using the hurdy-gurdy and then he's, I don't like that one, that's kind of weird, give me the mandala, it's more like a guitar, they start playing the mandala and everyone just kind of joins in together. Now if you've ever played the Mousy multiplayer game Lord of the Rings Online, they have a mechanic with an ABC music system that allows you to do that as players. Now it's really, 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 really old, but if you've never seen what it's like for a band to play where people improvise and switch in at the end of a bar, that's kind of what you want to kind of have happen here. People aren't in your group, they aren't individually playing the song by themselves. They're playing a part in a song, and when they're playing the right part at the right time, when they start to play, and then when they stop, their part fades away. So if you can play this music, you could read the entry on the next page, okay? Let's go on to there. So here we go. As you play the song, the world around you shifts. The sun and the moon rises and sets thousands of times. You see the clouds move in reverse, smoke billowing on the horizon, the sounds of battles, clanging swords, and the screams of death. Flaming arrows assail the walled city, and the stones crumble to dust. Warriors ride past you but don't see you. It's as if you're not there, but you are. Yet you can't seem to stop playing the instrument in your hand. The air shifts from the parched, dusty heat of the desert to a cool, misty freshness of the spring water. You hear water flowing and a campfire crackling. The desert vanishes. You stand shrouded by night around a roaring campfire. The voice of a woman singing lingers for a moment but fades. Ancient stone ruins and magnificent blue pillars tower around you. Beyond, the walls of an ancient city flickering in torchlight lies to the south. In front of you are a pair of sandstone estate buildings, crumbling and partially destroyed. Inside one is candlelight and the sound of a little girl's voice talking to herself playfully. You feel your soul tugged into the past. So at this point, your players will be like, whoa, now stuff's kicking off. This is going to be cool. What happens next, Now, this is a situation where if you do play the song, you can kind of make the song turn off and just players stop playing the music or whatever. So players, the chest is still there. They all have the instruments with them. Anything they were wearing they had with them is with them. All the players are transported simultaneously. So if one player was in the group like not playing the instrument and trying to shapeshift into a hummingbird to go find water, you can have everyone kind of pulled and move together. Anyone in that 3x3 grid, once the song plays long enough, they're all going to be transported. And basically what's happened, they're not being moved into a new place, they're being taken back in time, because where they were standing and where the trunk is the same spot the trunk has been in forever, over 1,000 years gone long. Now, when I play these games, you've heard my videos. Some of the soundscape sounds are too loud, but I gave you links to some of these ones right here. I'd click on them, but I think they probably bring up my web browser right here on the right page. Let's see if we can do this real quick. I'm going to pull this up on another page so you don't have to hear it. Actually, so you do get to hear it, right? Let's see if we can get this to work for you. So we've got links to some of these sounds here. Let's see what these sound like here. So this one here is a really good, it's the first one. Actually, it's this one here. It says a surrealistic ambience. I'm going to let this play a little loud for a moment. So this one's really good because if you use this in the background, it has this kind of moany sound. It doesn't really sound like a natural location, right? Another one you can use is the night campfire one. We'll just click on that one too. Now the night campfire sound effect, these are all done by Sword Coast Soundscapes. You get the sound of the campfire, you get the crickets, If you listen very carefully, you still hear the sound of the creepy surrealistic sound happening in the background. Now you're going to get sounds like this owl and stuff like that happening at the same time, you know, but don't really worry about that too much, right? And then you got another one here, which is the Oasis, lapping water, insects, and birds. So this one sounds kind of like this right here. It's kind of like water and a little bit of birds and creaking frogs and things like that. And very lastly, you have this little bit strong flowing water flowing like a stream in a canal sound effect. And what you can do is, let's play listen to that one isolated here for a second. It's kind of a woodland waterfall. The water sound of this one's a little loud. It's a little fast and running like that. So if you blend all those together, I'm actually going to turn these off real quick. If you blend all those together, that, and then the ambient sound of the Oasis, which I'll turn off now, and the sound of the crickets in the night, and you turn that off now too. And you can have, lastly, you can have this creepy ambient sound of the temple in the background. If you blend all this together, they make a great backdrop for the players in exploration mode as they start playing the game. And later on, there's some battle sounds, which I put a link in here too, which are fun to pull out when the battle really kicks in high gear, but it's a lot of screaming and yelling. It's kind of loud. We're going to let this play here in the background just for a second, give you a sense of what it sounds like, right? The joys of Wi-Fi. Oh my goodness, that's loud, isn't it? Let's just turn that down a little bit. So, those kind of sounds, I don't know, the guy sounds like he got hurt pretty bad there. Those sounds work pretty well when you want to have ambience in the background to kind of set the tone for what you're playing, but it's really up to you whether you want to use these or not. So I give you a description of how to use those kinds of things. I think they're kind of neat. They add a lot to it. Let's go ahead and talk about the location that we've warped our players to. So this is the map for you, right? And north is looking up. And you'll actually find it's also the same kind of view as this here, right? And we're going to talk about this in real time later on. So this is a legend for you as a game master. So what you've got over here is we've got this location number 1 is considered the West Terrace. So you got a campfire, which is this little area here, and it's got little cushions and pillows and little mats around it. So this is where the red chest full of the magic instruments is. This is where the party beams to, Scotty. This is where the party arrives at. So if they're standing near the red chest, they're kind of warped into the spot, standing in the same exact spot. There's no slipping and falling down the dunes. There's no wonky business or anything like that. But they're pretty much there. Now, if you have a situation where one player is out dorking around 3 dunes to the left, have them warp over here and take one of the spots and go like, whoa, how did I get here? I don't think there's anything real terribly wrong with that. You do want the party together right here, okay? So number 2 is this one right here. This is this little marker we see right here. This is the actual canal. It's spring fed and the water's flowing south. Now north is to the top, as you can see this right here. So the water's flowing down this way. And it's flowing pretty rapidly. It's about 2.5 feet deep. So it's not something you want to wade in and go up to your kneecaps, okay? It's beautiful, crystal clear spring water with a kind of indigo hue to it. It's really beautiful, totally clean. You can drink it. Everything's great. Now, over here at Area 3, we have what we call the Ruined West Estate. Now, these aren't full, happy, perfect buildings in their grandest form. What you're finding is buildings that are partially collapsed and decayed, but still in pretty good shape. So these buildings are kind of representing what it would be like if you went here 200 years after these buildings were destroyed in a battle. But you've got the landscape and the vegetation are taking things back over. But oddly enough, it's decorated and has someone living in it as if it was totally perfect shape. So you have this kind of funkiness happening between the present, which is just a desert, the past, which is a crumbling ruin, and the ancient past where everyone's still alive and living there. So number 4 is, of course, what do we have here? 4 goes down to a swampy area. If you want to make a battle map that extends out further than this, you can do that. It kind of flows into a lagoon at the base of a walled city, and we'll talk about the walled city as well. Let's go ahead and cover the right-hand side, the east side. Next, we have this eastern terrace, which is a big flat platform with 4 columns around it. There's no campfire here. There's no chest or anything like that. This is just an empty, sandy, dusty one. And number 6 is a ruined east estate, which is completely barren, just has sand run over it and lots of plants growing over it. So you see these swooping topography lines here. So these are like, little bushes and flowers, maybe little cacti, some palm trees growing. So the deserts, even though there's water, the desert and the oasis kind of taking the whole place back over. You can see these little walls here define the edge of the canals, and there's all kinds of plants just overgrowing with beautiful flowers. Now, when the players arrive, I want it to be night. I think it works better at night. And the reason for that is there's a number of situations where you can put braziers and torches which will illuminate things in an interesting way. So we've got some visual images we can show your players that give you an idea of what these places look like. Now on this map, we made these little cameras, and basically how they work is the little round part represents the pivot point, and the little bent over ice cream cone shape is kind of like the arc of the view. So in this situation here, this camera here that we see right here, let's do it, highlight this for you. This one right here, it's looking down this way, right? And this camera over here, this one here is looking up to the right towards number 2. Or this one over here is looking down into the marsh. Whoops, looks like the wrong thing. So those cameras to give you an idea of what pictures of the next following pages kind of tie into it. Now, let's take a look at the first pictures. Right, so we got this is at night, big beautiful starry sky, only a couple clouds, and you can see on the right hand side the oasis is kind of taken over. You got a lot of crumbling ruins, but torches are still lit, the water's flowing, it's really beautiful. So you really want to create this contrast between like the indigo night and the indigo water and the reflections and the warm flickering torches. And what we're looking at is the west terrace and the west terrace building. It's as if we're standing at the edge of the eastern terrace. Let's go on and look at the next one. Now, if we were to kind of turn around and look back, and this is looking at the west terrace looking southwest, we see up to our right there's kind of an open sky area, and in the distance this is walled city. So this walled city is all part of this ripple in time. If the players try to go to it, they can't actually reach it. As they get close to the walled city, they step through it, through the walls if they're translucent, and they end up on the other side, which at this stage of adventure, the players have probably already figured that out. They're probably getting in their mind, figured out, they're like, whoa, I'm in some kind of strange mystical place that loops on itself. I can't really get away. I can't really go anywhere. So they may be initially confused. But like I said in the beginning, let those players try and figure that stuff out. It's okay for them to push their boundaries. You don't need to tell them that there's a city, but you can't go to it. Like, don't do that. Let them go figure that out for themselves. If we go to the north of the map and we look back right down the middle of the canal, it kind of looks just like this. The estate on the right-hand side, where most of the gameplay is going to take, the one on the left is pretty much just completely empty, and you have this beautiful walled city to the south. We got a couple more views here, kind of looking what it'd be like if you walk down to the marsh. You can show their players. You go down to the marsh, the water just turns into a bunch of reeds and overgrowth, gets pretty high in the weed side, and you can see the walled city. You can see there's torches lit up there. There's all kinds of hanging gardens going on. It looks like a really interesting place, so it's going to draw players to it. I think it's okay for them to start going towards like the dome structure you see there and everything else. But as soon as they start getting close to these things, they start to fade away and they see back where they were. There's even a spot where you can kind of stand in between the two locations and look left and look right and see the opposite ends of the same mirror. So if you convey that kind of a theme to your player, they're really going to be kind of like, whoa, this is really weird. What's going on here? This is really strange. Another picture here is another shot kind of looking over the one of the terraces off to the walled city again to give you a sense of like some of the stones, how the light illuminates thing, where planters are and stuff like that. And we got one last photograph down here, just another more character photograph to give you a sense of what these platforms and some of the steps might look like. And you can see pretty clear there's lots of weeds and sand everywhere. So once you get that vibe going on, we can get right back into the gameplay. Most players will stop playing music and either prepare you for battle or begin exploring the surroundings. There's no immediate danger upon arriving at the Indigo Oasis, so I encourage you to let the players explore. This is called exploration mode. In essence, the player is not moved or teleported somewhere. They're in the same spot where the Sandstorm hit at grid 5 on the map. Instead, they've traveled back in time to a period during the conflict between the two brothers as noted previously, performing the recall knowledge check. Now, you can let the players do a recall knowledge check right here on the spot. They've transported to a new location. If they start asking anything about, like, what do the ruins look like? Can I identify any of the architecture? Do I know where I am? Any questions like that, just go ahead and give them this kind of entry here. The buildings before you match what they once saw in ancient texts, mosaics, and paintings. The fabled kingdom of the Indigo Waters. As you recall, the kingdoms were interlocked in a brutal war between two brothers that ultimately led to the destruction of both empires over 1,000 years ago. And there was two factions. The Indigo Waters, ruled by Mehmet Tinan III, and the Crimson Sun, ruled by his jealous brother Ahmed Tinan. So as soon as possible, you want to have Jana Tinan appear. She's going to appear in the doorway, run the players excited, loves the music you're playing, says it was her mother's song she wrote for her and sang to her. She speaks perfect common. So this little girl you can use as a vehicle as a game master to communicate directly with the players. But remember, you're talking about a 10-year-old little girl who thinks that everything's fine, nothing weird's going on, and she thinks so excited that you've showed up. So you can read this entry in the lower right-hand corner. The little girl in the Indigo Road runs out of the ruined western state and embraces you. She excitedly demands you keep playing the music, saying, "That's my mother's song, and you must be the travelers that she promised that were coming." She seems overjoyed and tugs on your arm. So at this stage, you can start to see, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Now, this page here is really important. This is to give the game master a sense of what the real deal is in the long term, but I don't want you to show these pictures to the players yet. This will be revealed later on at the resolution, the epilogue of the whole thing. Jana's dead. She's just a spirit. Her spirit's lingering at the most magical memory she ever had, which is listening to her mother sing Marco Polo song to her by the campfire as a group of royal musicians played the music. She thinks you guys are the royal musicians that have been sent by her mother to play the music and entertain her because her mother went off to the palace and said she would come back later. So Jana was there with her 4-month-old floppy-eared Africanus mix Jingo, puppy Jingo. So Jana made the musicians play Marco Polo, the song, that night for her, but at one stage, the Crimson Sun Warriors charged on the platform and killed the musicians in cold blood. Jingo ran away, and Jana was captured and tortured to death over the course of 3 weeks by her uncle Ahmed Tinan, as a show of his disdain for his brother and family lines that ostracized him years before. That's a pretty brutal situation, right? So the little girl's dead, and she was tortured to death. The other faction wiped out the entire family. So Jingo ran away, the mother was ultimately killed, and the little girl was tortured to death. So what you really have here is the spirit of the little girl staying in a place that was the most wonderful and happy and memorable for her before all the bad things started to happen. So the remainder of the adventure has the players present during that attack. If successful at defending her through the entire combat, or with the magic of the song, or just defending her, her mother will appear with the little dog Jingo, and they leave this world and find peace in the afterlife. So remember, don't show these pictures to the players until the end. So let's go briefly over this. We'll speed things up. I know we hit almost the hour mark here. We've got 10 minutes to go for the hour mark. So this is a layout to give you a sense of how to play this as a player and a game master. So every one of the yellow skulls represent the direction enemies should spawn from. And this is the kind of adventure where you're going to spawn just enough enemies to come towards Jana as necessary to keep things on the edge and dangerous for the players. Now, over on this left-hand side, we have this little marker here to represent where Jana is. And at certain stages in the fight, if she gets terrified or scared, she's going to run back into the little building here, which is where she plays. There's a big, beautiful table full of food. There's candelabras, there's curtains, there's beds, chairs, all kinds of fun stuff, scrolls and scriptures on the wall. But this is the campfire where the music's played. So if you stand in this location where the red trunk is and play instruments, as soon as you start playing the music, this is where you're going to be. If everyone tries to move away from this area, Jana stays by the campfire and will run up in the building. So if you stay in this area here and start playing the music, it'll create this magical sphere of music around this platform, which causes the enemies that attack to transform into something much weaker. So the arrows represent the ways that the bad guys could get to you and the player. And we're going to talk about that here on the next page, right? So where we got here. So this is a combat sequence. In the attack, the enemies appear in the darkness, okay, so you can't see them spawn or something like that, and they'll work their way going after Jana. Use all 6 of these spawn spots to kind of keep the flow of the enemies interesting. And page 33 tells you about how to balance this. When they eventually appear, they're going to be the living version of Crimson Warriors, as if you step back in time the night of the actual attack. These next 3 pages are very dense and give you a lot of details about how to handle the attack and what goes on. For example, right? Have the players appease Jana by playing the Marco Polo song. This is really key. This is the only thing you kind of need to have contrived in the adventure. You need her after say, please play the song. My mom told you would play. I'll try playing, and she can't play. And she really wants you to play the song. The moment one of the person in the party or 2 people start playing the song, it starts playing the song magically like you've done before, that's when the attack is going to come. So at first, living Crimson Sun Warriors will run forward and try to capture her and drag her away, taking her off the battle map into the darkness. If that's allowed to happen, you lose the situation. Normally, the soldiers only attack and fight players that are not using an instrument. So using an instrument actually makes you invisible to these guys because you're not actually in the same moment in time. Think of this shifting. When you're playing the song, you're 500 years later in time than the time where actual Jana's spirit's trapped. So over the course of this, Jana will run into the western state and try to evade soldiers, ducking on the dinner table, all sorts of resourceful 10-year-old actions. Think Kevin McAllister from Home Alone. She will not go anywhere except the areas marked on the map, okay? And we said just a few moments ago, she's not going to go anywhere but here or here. She's not going to run off into the desert or do anything like that, right? We made some notes about this. Now, feel free to have Jana do a leg kick and kick guys in the shin if she wants to. Most of the time, she's going to be hard to grab. The only way she's going to be grabbed is if 2 of the living Crimson Sun soldiers successfully get within 1 5-foot square of her, roll a d20, each of them a 15 or higher, and that means they've successfully grabbed her. And once they grabbed her, she'll just start wiggling and crying out for help crazy. And what they're going to try to do is try to drag her off into the darkness. It doesn't matter which way they go. You can make them drag them off through the water, drag them off into the marsh, drag them to the city, drag them off to the north. It doesn't matter. It'll be pretty obvious these guys are trying to control this little girl, like abducting her, basically. They don't want to kill her. They want to abduct her. And once they start doing that, their speed's going to drop to 10. Now, with the 3-action economy, that means left to their own devices, they can move 30 feet. Now, that's not that far, but they're trying to deal with her wiggling and squirming. But give her a chance to escape from that. All that will give you a chance to not have the whole game session end in the first 5 melee rounds, right? If a player doesn't understand what's happening, she can actually get free. And we put a rule in here. We kind of wing this little house rule. So if she, every round, right, a round is every 3 actions, a 3-action economy, 1 round. If she rolls a 15 higher on a d20, she can wiggle free and come running back to you. So if she does get free, she'll come back to you and hug you. Now, I've said before that she's a ghost, so she still feels like a real person. If she runs up and grabs you and hugs you, it's because you're kind of trapped in the same time frame as her. It's not like she's some translucent Ebenezer Scrooge, Bob Marley type thing going on, or whatever's going on, or touch my robe and all that kind of business. So if she grabs, if the little girl gets grabbed, if she gets grabbed and taken away, what basically happens, this is now a losing condition. Now, as a game master, what you want to do is you want to have the players get swarmed by enemies until they get killed. And when they get killed, they're going to appear back in the desert, standing there right by the red chest with the chest open, and they haven't uncovered the instruments. So they haven't actually died. They've been pulled out of the ripple in time and reset. So think of the film Groundhog Day. So you just go right back to page 17 and let the players figure out what to do. Now, at this stage, if they want to keep wandering around the desert and die in the desert, they can do that. But they might want to try again, which is something very interesting about this surrealistic adventure you may not see in other ones. In other adventures, you have dying and doomed, and boom, it's game over. Total party kill, right? In this situation, if someone dies, they get sent back to the desert where the red box is, the red crate is. So, for example, let's say you're playing with 4 players. One player gets isolated and just starts attacking 2 guys at once, and they start spearing him and jabbing him to death and pull their scimitars and lop his head off, and he's dead. If the player is dead, he gets warped back in time, forward in time to the present day. If he pulls an instrument out of the crate and starts playing it, he'll warp back into this time frame and can continue to fight with no damage taken at all, as if he's being completely healed. Now, that's pretty bizarre, but that will really help a real new player realize that I can try to fight, I can try some things, I can do some interesting dangerous things, and you can ramp up the difficulty really crazy without them being like, I died, it wasn't that fun. So this is another element. Music and pacing. Music changes things. When people are playing the song, when they're playing the song, the enemies don't see them. But when they play the song, enemy that runs within the sphere of music is warped later in time and becomes dead. It's like they've been warped 500 years into the future. So they turn into skeletal versions of themselves. So when that happens, they're matching the time frame of all the ruins, and now they're really, really weak, and they're just fodder enemies to deal with. So the winning situation kind of has 2 parts. Kill all the Crimson Sun warriors that are prevent them from capturing Jana, or transform them all into skeletal versions and then kill them all. So I really want you to kind of deal with the pacing on your own based upon whether you got 1 player, 2 players, 4 players, or what have you, so you can throw more enemies if you need to. Now, I suggest you use 4 live enemies at first. If the players start turning them into undead enemies, you can add more to the field. Just keep throwing enemies onto the playfield and ramping up till it gets hard. If players start having trouble, stop ramping it. So another thing you can do is while the song's being played, it heals everyone in the area effect by 10 health per turn. So if someone's almost dying, 1 person can be playing the song, and someone can run inside the sphere of the song and fight inside of it with this 10 health regeneration happening. That should really help players who aren't really good or don't have a healer or burned up all their spells, a way to kind of stay alive. You see this mechanic sometimes in MMOs, but not executed as cool as this. Let's just put it that way. So the key here is really about tension. You want them to try to save Jana, prevent the bad guys from getting her. They're trying to capture her. They'll kill you if you attack them, turn them into skeletons, and all this stuff will start piecing together in your mind. So this is what you'd want to read them. As you play the song, the sounds of battles, clanging swords, and screams of death rise. Flaming arrows soar overhead, and the buildings inside the walled city burn. Warriors ride past you, but don't see you. It's as if you're not there, but you are. Jana suddenly shrieks in terror as a group of soldiers run towards the platform. As they charge for Jana, the music hits them in waves, and flesh tears from their bones. The warriors cry in anguish as Jana hunkers down and covers her head. The music shifts the passage of time, turning what was once warriors into skeletal, mindless undead. Yet they lumber forward, attacking anyone they see, including you. So we've got 2 little kind of stat blocks here. On the left is the alive version. Now these are AC 19, 21 with a shield raise, good fort reflex and willpower saves, good strength dex, that good stats. Attack of opportunity, they're as strong as an orc, okay? Hit points 25, speed 20 feet, same movement rate as a person. They got a,
with spear, they're using +10 is versatile. With scimitar, it's +10 is agile weapon. So they have forceful and sweep weapon traits. So that is a very good, strong soldier. You know, if someone starts having trouble with just one of those, you may want to have your player pull back and fight inside the music. And if you really, really, really get hard pressed, you could possibly even have Jana play the music and keep people alive. Although I don't really want you to play it that way. I don't want the players to rely on the NPC to save the day. Let them try and fight this guy, because if they get killed, remember, they get a reset button. They get to go get out of jail free card. They get to go back to the desert and try again. So don't give it to them too much. Let them fail if they have to. Now, if they're playing the music and one of these soldiers runs up to them while the music is playing, all the flesh is going to get ripped off their body. It's just be bones left over. So now we drop the AC down to 10, which is really easy to hit, and drop the hit points down to 15. 2 solid hits from a melee weapon should wipe one of these guys out and just crumble the dust at their feet. We drop their strength. The spear is not going to have as much bonus to hit. It's down to +6. The scimitar goes down to +6. You know, so this is a much chumpier, weak, mindless, undead skeleton. You can turn these if you're a cleric and all that kind of business. So those are the 2 sets of enemies that you're going to want to work with in this encounter. The thing about it that's interesting is it gives players different ways to deal with it that will work for them. So how many is enough? However many you think is enough. Do you want the fight to go on long? Is it taking a long time to kill 3 guys? Are they wiping out 6 guys? Ramp it up, ramp it up, ramp it up, and then kind of make it a climax. There's no boss or anything. And then have Jana go, oh my goodness, that was crazy. So then, once it feels like they've wiped everything out, right, you can start having the sound of Jana's voice, of Jana's mother's voice happen. So once the player saved Jana from the attacker's abductors, have her puppy run up and start licking her in the face. This should be a moment of joy and adorable and charming. Shortly after, have her mother walk to the platform shrouded in a pale blue light. She thanks you for helping her daughter find peace. She says you should each keep an instrument for yourself, and that you're ever in trouble, you can find sanctuary here. And I've got a reward on the right-hand column. We've written some dialogue type of prose here for you to read. A scruffy pup runs onto the platform and Jana exclaims, Jingo! The pup licks her face as she tumbles to the ground. The pale blue light shimmers and a woman in an indigo robe appears, serene and smiling. As she calls Jana, come along now, it's time to go. Jana leaps up and gives you a warm hug. She asks, come back and play music soon, promise. Jana joins her mother and Jingo sniffs the nearby bushes. Thank you for helping my daughter find peace. Please take one of the instruments so you can always find peace here at the Indigo Oasis. The 2 walk off into the night and vanish forever. So this magic item is very powerful, but it's really kind of only usable in certain situations. It shouldn't ruin your game. But inside the red trunk are all the musical instruments you saw on page 18. Pretty sure I got that page number right. I'll double check that. Each player can take 1. You can't take 3. Playing the instrument allows the player to teleport back in time and space to the Indigo Oasis. Playing music at the campfire will heal the player 10 health per turn. The water is clean and infinite. The food on the table is nourishing. The campfire is warm. It's always night here. The sun never rises. The players must remain here for 8 hours, from 9 p.m. at night till at least 5 a.m., right? So after which they teleport back in time to the space where they were before. Anyone resting here for 8 hours is cured of all disease, maladies, and physical trauma. But you can only use this 1 time per day, and it's not used by anyone who was involved in the adventure. So you can't take this instrument with you and sell it at the city-state of the Invincible Overlord and have some other guy start using it. So playing the instrument has no effect to non-original owners. Time will pass in the Indigo Oasis on a 1-to-1 ratio. 8 hours of Indigo Oasis is 8 hours where you were. And there's other creative ways you can use this. If you have a person in your party that's dead and you're playing a later adventure, dead players can be brought here and will be resurrected immediately, but cannot leave for 8 hours. To do this, you must hold the person in your arms and play the song for 4 minutes. So it's not like it's this free resurrection item. You're in the middle of some massive dungeon, you're at the very bottom level, and Demogorgon blows your head off and you die. You just go grab the clerical quit and start playing a song. 4 melee rounds, that's 4 minutes, not 4 melee rounds. That's a long time to be playing the song for that to work. But if you can play the song long enough, you're about to die in a blizzard or something that you can get away somehow, you can teleport this location. The person that's dead will be brought back to life, and then after 8 hours, you'll be returned to back where you were. So that's going to require a way for you to prepare, memorize spells. It's kind of a get out of jail free card. Now, if that's too powerful for your campaign, just change it. So although the playing instrument gets you musical talent, you can only play this one song. Even if you're skilled in music, playing any other song merely creates music, has no additional effects. And lastly, we've got a copy of the map here in case you want to play electronically online. We've got an author credit page that says, hey, this is a little about me, the book I've written, and my Patreon page link. And that pretty much wraps things up. And here's our open game license and the citation and then credits for me that wrote this thing and our last page. And that's pretty much it. So it's been about 1 hour and 3 minutes, long video. A lot of cool content here. At this stage, what we're looking for is feedback. feedback on typos, feedback on the flow, feedback on elements you think are missing. Anything that's going to positively make this better for somebody else to play it. Is it enough information for people to go? Are there suggestions that you think would be a little bit different, maybe articulate a little bit differently? I'd like to keep the primary theme. I've already put a lot of hours in this so far, but I'm really looking for refinement at this stage. Keep the vision alive, but refinement. And if you contribute that kind of stuff, I'll give you a credit page and put your name in here, and you can say, hey man, I contributed to this cool thing that we made. All right, we're gonna wrap the video up right here. I hope you're having fun, and we'll talk to you soon. Be sure to tell your friends about this this adventure, and hopefully they'll have fun playing it too. Take care. We'll talk to you later. See ya.